Welcome back to BYoungMinistry.com, to another blog and to another podcast. Today we continue our study of the book of Acts. We're chapter 12, verses 12 through 19, which reads, When he considered this, he went to the home of Mary, the mother of John Mark. Many people were gathered there praying. Peter knocked on the outside door, and a servant girl named Rhoda came to answer it. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so happy she forgot to open the door. Instead, she ran inside and told the group, "Peter is at the door." They said to her, "You're crazy." But she kept on saying it was true, so they said, "It must be Peter's angel." Peter continued to knock, and when they opened the door, they saw him and were amazed. Peter made a sign with his hand to tell them to be quiet. He explained how the Lord led him out of the jail, and he said, "Tell James and the other believers what happened." Then he left to go to another place. The next day the soldiers were very upset and wondered what had happened to Peter. Herod looked everywhere for him, but could not find him. So he questioned the guards and ordered that they be killed. That's Acts chapter 12, verses 12 through 19. Today we continue our study of Acts chapter 12, where Herod has ordered the killing of the Apostle James, the brother of the Apostle John. Herod also arrested Peter and had him jailed with plans to kill him as well. But an angel of the Lord came during the night and freed Peter from the clutches of the misguided king. It just goes to show that if the will of man does not parallel the will of God, especially when someone's life is at stake, God will have his way. In verses 12 through 15 of today's passage, we read, When he considered this, he went to the home of Mary, the mother of John Mark. Many believers were gathered there praying. Peter knocked on the outside door, and a servant girl named Rhoda came to answer it. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so happy she forgot to open the door. Instead, she ran inside and told the group, "Peter is at the door." They said to her, "You are crazy." But she kept on saying it was true. So they said, "It must be Peter's angel." From a completely stunned posture, Peter realized he was not having a dream, so he departed from the outer walls of the jail, and he went to the home of Mary, the mother of John Mark. In his first epistle, Peter referred to John Mark as his son, because John Mark was probably led to the Lord by Peter. Mary's house was the place where the believers met, with a certain measure of regularity. Once arriving at the house of Mary, Peter knocked on the door of the gate. It was then that a servant girl named Rhoda answered the knock. Even without seeing his face, she knew it was Peter. She heard his voice. Rhoda was so overjoyed, she simply didn't open the gate. She was so excited she forgot to let him in. She simply got caught up in the moment and rushed inside without attending to the door. The reaction of the believers there at Mary's house was they thought Rhoda was literally a maniac. The word translated crazy here is also used twice in Acts chapter 26, bringing with it the idea of insanity. Rhoda continued to confidently reaffirm that it was truly Peter at the door. Nobody believed her, even though they had prayed feverishly for Peter's release. They did not believe it when God answered their prayers. These believers who had witnessed the greatest miracle ever, the resurrection of the Messiah, were praying in faith for Peter's release. But they really didn't think Peter would be released. With their heads, they believed God would do it, but with their hearts, they believed not. I'm so glad that God answers fervent but faithless prayers. All the while, Peter kept knocking while those inside debated. It was then that the believers there at Mary's house needlessly doubted and entertained the idea. Instead of it being Peter, it could have been his guardian angel. This may be a claim based on what is said in Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 14, which reads, "Are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for those who will inherit salvation?" Even though it was Peter at the door, these believers considered it might have been an angel. They also knew that in eternity, angels will serve the redeemed. In verse 16 of today's passage, we read, "Peter continued to knock, and when they opened the door, they saw him and were amazed." At this point, it was comical. Peter persisted with his knocking, and once the door opened, and Peter was obviously exhausted standing there, the believers inside were astonished. The word translated amazed has previously appeared 7 times in the book of Acts. It is used one more time after this in 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 3, where Paul wrote, "For if we are beside ourselves, it is for God, or if we are of sound mind, it is for you." Beside ourselves literally means to stand aside. And Rhoda wasn't crazy after all. In verse 17 of today's passage, we read, "Peter made a sign with his hand to tell them to be quiet. He explained how the Lord led him out of the jail, and he said, 'Tell James and the other believers what happened.' Then he left to go to another place." As the door opened, Peter made a hand gesture, trying to get those inside the house to be quiet. The believers inside Mary's house undoubtedly exploded with joy once they saw Peter standing there. After entering the house, Peter explained how he was rescued by the angel. Then he told the believers to tell James and the other believers. This was James, the son of Alphaeus, also known as the brother of the Lord. In Galatians chapter 2 and verse 9, he is noted by Paul as one of the pillars of the church. He will preside over the council in Jerusalem in Acts chapter 15. As with other clues in Acts, this shows us that this James had become the leader of the church at that time. This is why Peter specifically singled him out. With the news conveyed, and certainly for the safety of those inside, Peter departed. With this unbelievable story, the spotlight turns away from Peter in the book of Acts. He will be mentioned by name in the next verse, and then only once again in Acts chapter 15 during the council at Jerusalem. From this point on, Saul, also known as Paul, will become the focus of the book of Acts until the end of the book. In verses 18 and 19 of today's passage, we read, "The next day soldiers were very upset and wondered what had happened to Peter. Herod looked everywhere for him but could not find him. So he questioned the guards and ordered that they be killed." The narrative turns to events back at the prison. We do not know how long it was from the time that Peter left the jail until the day came. Imagine the chaos that came upon the soldiers when they realized Peter was no longer there. Allowing a prisoner to escape was punishable even unto death. The impossibility of an escape would have left those inside absolutely stunned at not finding Peter. And yet he was not to be found. When Herod was told of the unfolding events, he personally went to the prison and looked it over. After his inspection, it was obvious that Peter was gone. It was at that moment that the lives of the guards were at stake. It would make no sense for them to simply let Peter go, even if he offered them large amounts of money. It was then that Herod ordered their death. It may seem unfair to someone that Peter escaped while these soldiers were executed. As the soldiers told their tale, the only explanation Herod would accept was that these men had betrayed him for who knows what, probably money in his mind. Interestingly, it was through money that the devil tried to trip up the Lord Jesus in the wilderness. Remember, he took him to the highest mountain and they looked over all of the kingdoms of this world. And Satan offered the Lord Jesus the kingdoms. Interestingly, the word translated kingdoms is the word from which we get our word economies. My friends, I trust this blog and this podcast are helping you in your walk with the Lord. If I can be of further assistance to you, shoot me an email at BYoungMinistry@gmail.com. Hey, have a great